Imagine, for a moment, someone who has made you laugh for decades.
Right. A real constant presence.
Yeah, someone who has been a fixture on your television screen.
Or in movie theaters.
Exactly. Maybe even a comforting presence in your living room since you were, just a kid.
You really feel like you intimately know them.
You do. You know their timing, you know their expressions. Now, I want you to imagine discovering that while this person was delivering these perfectly timed punchlines,
And radiating this incredible bubbly persona.
right, this irrepressible persona, while all that was happening, they were simultaneously living through unimaginably dark, hidden trauma.
The kind of pain that stays locked away.
Yes, literally locked away in a fireproof box for decades.
It's heavy.
It is. Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we are focusing on a true Hollywood icon, Christina Applegate.
Oh, absolutely. A legend.
And we're looking at her highly anticipated and frankly, brutally honest 2026 memoir.
You. With the sad eyes.
That's the one. The contrast we're going to explore today is it's staggering.
It really is. I mean, when we look at the trajectory of American pop culture over the last 50 years, she is a constant.
Completely.
But what this book reveals is an entirely parallel existence. We're looking at an endurance test that the public was completely blind to.
And to guide us through this, we have a really incredible stack of sources.
A great stack today.
We're pulling from this incredibly intimate March 2026 New York Times profile.
Written by Elizabeth Egan.
Right. We also have comprehensive publisher overview materials and a massive collection of raw, emotional reader reviews.
From platforms like Amazon and Goodreads.
Yeah. So the mission for this deep dive is to unpack the incredible duality of Christina Applegate's life.
How does a woman who built a legendary 50-year career on precise comedic timing.
Right. How does she secretly battle profound childhood abuse?
Navigate incredibly toxic relationships.
And eventually face a devastating multiple sclerosis diagnosis that brings everything to a sudden halt.
It's a lot to take in.
Okay, let's unpack this. Let's start by setting the scene, because the way this book is being introduced to the world
is just as unconventional as the book itself.
Unconventional is the perfect word for it. Typically, when a celebrity of this magnitude releases a highly anticipated memoir,
there's a very specific dance.
Yes, a heavily choreographed dance with the media.
You have the glamorous photo shoots.
The carefully lit television interviews.
The profile piece conducted over a 2-hour lunch at some exclusive Los Angeles restaurant.
Exactly. The machinery of Hollywood PR is designed to present a polished narrative of triumph.
But what the New York Times profile by Elizabeth Egan reveals is a complete and total dismantling of that machinery.
Egan, the interviewer, initially tries to play by those standard rules.
She tries to set up an in-person meeting.
Right, to talk about the book. She offers to be completely flexible.
Assuring Applegate they can cancel or reschedule at the last minute if there's an MS flare-up.
But Applegate firmly rejects the entire premise.
She refuses an in-person meetup entirely.
She dictates that the interview will be conducted via Zoom.
Or not at all.
Yeah. She's confining her press tour to a video screen from her bedroom.
That boundary setting is profound. It tells you immediately that the illness is dictating the terms of engagement.
It's not a diva demand.
No, not at all. It is an act of sheer survival. When you're managing a central nervous system disease like MS...
your energy is finite.
Exactly. It's a rapidly depleting resource. Forcing a journalist to enter her world via a webcam, rather than expending the monumental physical effort required to play the role of the gracious celebrity host in her own home.
It just sets the tone for the absolute lack of pretense that defines this book.
And when that Zoom camera turns on, the picture Egan paints in the profile is arresting.
We are placed immediately into Applegate's Laurel Canyon bedroom.
She's reclining against a tall headboard.
There is no designer gown.
No professional lighting kit.
None of that. She's wearing a simple black t-shirt.
She has a crescent moon necklace on.
And her hair is just thrown up in a floppy top knot.
It is the ultimate picture of someone who has entirely stripped away the Hollywood glamour.
Because she simply doesn't have the energy.
Or the desire to maintain the illusion anymore.
Right. And the environment surrounding her on that bed acts as a visual map of her current reality.
A bedroom, for most people, is a place of rest.
Yeah.
But for someone with severe progressive MS, the bed becomes the entire universe.
It becomes a command center.
A dining room.
A medical facility.
And sanctuary all at once. The profile leans heavily into the specific items within her reach.
And each one tells a story about the daily, grinding reality of chronic illness.
The details on her bedside table.
What she literally calls a disaster.
Right, the flotsam of her bedside. They're so incredibly telling.
Listen to the inventory she shares with the interviewer. She holds up a king-size bottle of Pepto-Bismol to the camera.
And sitting right next to it.
A bowl of Lay's barbecue potato chips.
Think about the semiotics of that specific pairing. The giant bottle of stomach medicine next to a bowl of heavily processed, salty snack food.
It perfectly encapsulates the chaotic trial-and-error reality of trying to find even a fleeting moment of comfort.
While managing intense physical symptoms.
It's a stark departure from the curated, pristine wellness aesthetics we're constantly sold by celebrity culture.
Totally. Then she pulls out a nasal diffuser.
And she doesn't just show it to the camera.
She takes this silicone horseshoe and tucks it right into her nostrils on the Zoom call.
To demonstrate exactly how it works.
She is completely unbothered by how it looks.
She points out pictures of her dad, tulips from her mom, and then she introduces two incredibly specific comfort items.
First, her heating pad.
But it's not just a heating pad. She has named it Jake Ryan.
The dreamy love interest from the classic 80s movie 16 Candles.
Which is just a brilliant flash of her specific brand of humor.
Even in the midst of profound physical pain, she is deploying pop culture irony to cope.
And right next to Jake Ryan is a floppy blue emotional support stuffed animal.
At one point during the interview, when the conversation gets heavy...
And she gets stressed.
Yeah, she actually drapes the stuffed animal's arms over her shoulders.
Let's pause on that image for a second.
An Emmy-winning, Tony-nominated icon.
A woman who has commanded enormous sound stages in Broadway theaters for half a century.
And here she is, seeking grounding and physical comfort in the arms of a stuffed animal.
While recounting her life to the New York Times.
It speaks volumes about the emotional weight of what she's carrying.
And the sheer vulnerability required to finally put it down.
The vulnerability extends to her own skin, too.
Yeah, she shows the interviewer her above-the-waist tattoos.
She reads them off, her daughter's name, the name of a deceased cat.
And then a phrase written in black script that just says, "And so it is."
And so it is. That is a philosophical anchor.
It is a statement of radical acceptance.
When you trace the arc of her life, from enduring severe childhood trauma to fighting for agency in a notoriously brutal industry.
Only to be struck down by an incurable degenerative illness just as she reaches the peak of her power.
Fighting against the fundamental unfairness of it all would consume whatever energy she has left.
And so it isn't about giving up.
No, it's about looking the brutal reality of the situation in the eye and refusing to waste time wishing it were different.
Which brings us to the inciting incident for the memoir itself. Why write this book now?
She debuted in 1972 on Days of Our Lives.
She has been working virtually every single day of her life for 5 decades.
And then, as she puts it, she was stopped in her tracks by MS.
You often hear public figures talk about writing memoirs because they feel a profound responsibility to set the record straight.
Or they want to share their journey to inspire the next generation.
Right, the PR spin is usually baked right into the motivation.
But Applegate's stated reason for finally writing her story is refreshingly devoid of any of that manufactured nobility.
Her reasoning is so blunt, it's hilarious and tragic all at once.
An agent asked if she wanted to write a book.
And she basically told him, "I guess now is the time because I'm freaking bored."
She literally admitted that she ran out of Real Housewives episodes to watch.
So she decided she might as well write her own drama.
That is the classic Applegate defense mechanism at work. She uses a self-deprecating punchline to deflect from the profound existential grief of having her life's purpose ripped away from her.
Going from a relentless 50-year work schedule to being confined to a bed creates an enormous, terrifying vacuum.
Writing the book became a vital channel for a restless, highly creative energy that suddenly had nowhere else to go.
And the physical act of writing it was an extreme undertaking. She wasn't sitting at a vintage typewriter romantically tapping away at the keys.
BMS made that impossible.
She worked with a collaborator, but she didn't just give him a few polite hour-long interviews over tea.
The sources note she had him record her talking for 6 or 7 hours a day.
Every single day for months on end.
The sheer stamina required for that process is staggering.
For someone battling the severe cognitive and physical fatigue that defines MS, talking for 7 hours a day is a marathon.
It suggests a desperate burning urgency to expel the story from her body.
But the most crucial detail about the source material for this book is where the text actually comes from.
This isn't just a 54-year-old woman hazily trying to recall the emotions of what happened when she was a teenager.
No, she utilized her actual physical childhood diaries.
What's fascinating here is the psychological weight of handing over unedited teenage trauma diaries to a collaborator,
Memory is notoriously fluid and unreliable.
particularly when severe trauma is involved. Human beings naturally view their past through the protective lens of their present.
Often softening the edges of the pain to make it survivable.
By directly quoting her diaries, she bypasses that protective filter entirely.
It creates a visceral, real-time narrative.
The reader isn't getting a polished therapeutic retrospective.
They are being plunged into the chaotic, confused, raw mindset of a child experiencing the trauma as it unfolds.
And we really need to emphasize that these diaries were never intended for public consumption.
They weren't sitting on a bookshelf.
She had them locked away in a heavy steel fire-resistant box.
She had given her best friend, who also serves as her assistant, strict, explicit instructions regarding this box.
The instruction was, when I die, burn the journals.
Burn them to ashes. That is how deeply, how desperately she wanted these secrets permanently erased from the world.
A firebox is designed to protect our most valuable possessions from destruction.
But she was utilizing it as a tomb.
She was using it to protect the outside world and perhaps to protect her own carefully constructed public persona from the destructive truth of her reality.
To consciously decide to unlock that tomb and hand the contents over to a publisher is an act of immense, almost terrifying vulnerability.
So what was the catalyst? What makes a person decide to publish the very things they swore to incinerate?
The turning point she shares is incredibly touching. She reveals that her daughter was going through a very tough time recently.
And as a mother, Applegate felt this desperate need to show her daughter that she wasn't alone in her emotional struggles.
So she went to the firebox. She unlocked it,
She found a journal from when she was roughly 15 years old.
handed it to her daughter, and told her, "Take this to your room."
That is a profoundly brave parenting decision, to willingly shatter the illusion of maternal perfection.
To show your child the absolute darkest, most damaged version of yourself.
Simply to provide them with an emotional lifeline.
Her daughter's reaction after reading it was basically, "Oh man, Mom, you were so screwed up."
And Applegate's response encapsulates the entire ethos of the book.
She looked at her daughter and said, "Yeah, but I'm here for you. I get you. I am you. I just don't have the septum piercing."
It grounds the generational trauma in deep empathy. She is proving that survival is possible, even when the internal landscape feels completely broken.
I want you, the listener, to really think about this for a second. Try to imagine the physical notebooks or digital files where you kept your own teenage journals,
The ones filled with your deepest angst
your most irrational fears.
and your messiest, most embarrassing emotions.
Now imagine pulling those out of hiding and authorizing a major publisher to print them for millions of strangers to dissect.
The sheer terror of that exposure is hard to fathom.
It is an act of radical self-exposure that forces the audience to confront the deeply unsettling contrasts that define her formative years.
Which perfectly transitions us into the setting of that childhood. We have to dive into the reality of Laurel Canyon in the 1970s and 80s.
When you read the descriptions of this time and place in the sources, it is a masterclass in breathtaking contrasts.
On one hand, you have this idyllic, intensely bohemian paradise.
The aesthetic of Laurel Canyon during that era is heavily romanticized in American culture.
It holds this legendary, almost mythical status as a creative haven. We picture artists, musicians, and free spirits living in harmony.
Rejecting the rigid structures of traditional society.
And Applegate certainly paints a beautiful picture of the light that existed in her childhood.
The sensory details she recalls are incredibly warm. She talks about the smell of leaves on the ground after a rainstorm being like nothing else in the world.
She describes coming home to find her mom sitting quietly with a fire crackling in the fireplace and incense burning.
It was an environment of communal trust. Packs of kids running down the hills to each other's houses.
She notes that it was a neighborhood of single moms, and they fiercely looked out for each other.
She explicitly says those specific memories give her such beauty and such love.
On paper, it sounds like a beautifully feral, deeply connected way for a child to grow up.
The sensory details, the rain, the incense, the fire, evoke a profound feeling of warmth and safety.
But sociology tells us that in environments built entirely on unstructured freedom and loosely defined boundaries, the darkness can seep in rapidly.
And go completely unchecked.
And the darkness did seep in, devastatingly so.
She describes a massive, palpable shift in the culture of the canyon. She calls the energy freaky weird.
And she specifically pins this dark shift to the moment cocaine arrived heavily on the scene.
The introduction of hard, highly addictive narcotics into a bohemian, loosely structured community is a historical recipe for collapse.
The trusting, open-door policy of those single moms, which previously served as a communal safety net, suddenly becomes a massive vulnerability.
When the adults begin checking out of reality, the children are left completely exposed.
The trauma detailed in the book is severe.
During the interview with the New York Times, when Egan asks Applegate about the hardest part of her past to revisit, the emotional toll is immediate.
Applegate actually breaks down crying.
She says, being 5 and being molested, I can't even say it without crying.
This abuse was perpetrated by someone she specifically identifies as a neighborhood caregiver.
The betrayal of trust in that dynamic is absolute.
When the environment is culturally billed as a safe communal utopia and the threat comes from inside the house,
From a supposed caregiver who is trusted by the community,
it shatters a child's foundational sense of safety in the world.
it teaches the child that danger doesn't wear a monster's face.
It wears the face of the person assigned to protect them. As Applegate starkly writes in the book, this is where the story darkens almost to black.
And the darkness continued relentlessly behind the closed doors of her own home.
She details horrific, escalating abuse at the hands of her mother's boyfriend.
The sensory details that she kept locked away in those firebox journals are chilling because they are so vivid.
She says she can still smell the whiskey on his breath.
She clearly remembers his pinned eyes.
That phrase, pinned eyes, is terrifying when viewed through the lens of a child. Pinpoint pupils are a classic, unmistakable physiological sign of heavy opiate use.
Imagine the terror of a child looking up at the adult male in their home, the person who holds the physical power in the household.
And seeing that their eyes are pinned, realizing that the adult is completely chemically altered and detached from reality.
She describes this incredibly specific, haunting memory of him holding a tuna fish sandwich in one hand and a cigarette in his mouth while he was physically nodding out from the drugs.
It's such a mundane, almost absurd detail, a tuna fish sandwich paired with the absolute horror of an abusive adult losing consciousness while a cigarette burns inches from his face.
But that is exactly the mechanism of how trauma encodes in the human brain. The brain in a state of terror doesn't necessarily record a perfect linear narrative.
It latches onto peripheral, sensory details in the environment, the smell of the whiskey, the specific food on the plate, the burning ember of the cigarette.
Those minute details get frozen in time, forever linked to the feeling of sheer panic.
And he wasn't just a passive, nodding out addict.
No. The sources note that he actively facilitated her mother's drug addiction.
And he was violently, physically abusive to Applegate. She recounts a horrifying incident where he picked her up by her hair and hurled her against a wall.
This revelation completely reframes the entire cultural understanding of her early years in the industry.
While the public saw a young, vibrant actress learning her lines, hitting her marks, and showing up on television sets expected to act like a consummate professional,
She was surviving a home environment characterized by extreme unpredictability
severe substance abuse.
and life-threatening physical violence.
When the interviewer asks Applegate what she would say to her younger self if she could somehow step back in time into that world, her answer is heartbreakingly complex.
She talks about a later heartbreak in her life, a deeply toxic relationship.
And how much time she spent as a teenager thinking that specific heartbreak was going to literally kill her.
She says she wishes she could tell her younger self that the guy just wasn't worth the agony.
But then she pivots, noting, boy, did that girl not know how much more was going to hit her.
She points out the bitter reality that she would eventually battle cancer, and now severe MSX.
She wishes she could just wrap her arms around her younger self to brace her for the sheer volume of suffering that was still barreling toward her.
But even in that profound reflection, she maintains this incredibly sharp, unsentimental self-awareness.
Right, because even in that deeply poignant moment, she undercuts the sentimentality with a joke.
She notes that if she actually tried to hug her 13-year-old self, the rebellious teenager would probably just put a cigarette in her face.
She even retroactively chides her younger self, saying, also, dork, don't smoke when you're 13.
That specific deployment of humor is a highly evolved survival tool. It is the only thing that keeps the accumulated grief from swallowing her whole.
And the generational impact of this trauma is fascinating, particularly in how her mother reacted to the finished manuscript.
Applegate mentions that she had never spoken about these specific violent details publicly before.
And when her mother finally read the book, she found it incredibly hard to get through because she simply wanted to forget it had ever happened.
Applegate's response to her mother's desire to forget is so incredibly powerful. She says, I think she wanted to forget it, but you don't forget that kind of stuff, especially if you're a kid and you're watching.
That highlights the tragic disconnect between a parent and a child in a traumatic environment. The adult might possess the psychological capacity
Or the chemical assistance.
to blur the memories, to rationalize them away, or to compartmentalize the abuse as a dark chapter that is now closed.
But the child doesn't have those tools. The child is a sponge. The child is just watching, recording, and storing all that terror away in a mental firebox, waiting for the day they are strong enough to process it.
Which makes her immersion into the world of professional acting make profound sense.
The contrast between the chaos of her home life and the demands of her professional life is a critical piece of this puzzle.
Initially, acting was simply a financial necessity for her family.
But it rapidly evolved into an emotional escape hatch from the tumult of Laurel Canyon.
A television or film set, despite all of its intense pressures and long hours, is an incredibly structured, predictable environment.
There are strict call times.
There are scripts dictating exactly what everyone will say.
There are literal marks on the floor telling you exactly where to stand.
For a child navigating a home life completely devoid of rules or safety, the rigid structure of a soundstage can feel like the only safe harbor available.
And she didn't just survive in that harbor. She completely thrived.
Her career highlights are legendary. Everyone listening right now knows exactly who she is.
We all know her breakout, culture-defining role as the hilarious, oblivious Kelly Bundy on Married with Children.
We know her from cult classics like Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead.
Her incredible comedic turn in Anchorman.
Her lead role in Samantha Who.
And the brilliantly dark, nuanced comedy of Dead to Me.
Her talent wasn't just confined to a screen either. She possessed the formidable technical skill to mount a Tony-nominated run on Broadway.
Starring in the notoriously demanding Bob Fosse musical, Sweet Charity.
And the sources note a detail about that Broadway run that feels like a cruel foreshadowing of the physical hurdle she would later face.
On the very first night of previews for Sweet Charity, she suffered a sadistic blow of fate.
She severely broke her foot.
Dancing was a massive part of her identity and happiness, and to have her instrument break on the opening night of a pinnacle career moment is just devastating.
But she eventually returned to the stage. The overarching theme of her entire life seems to be the show must go on.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the concept of the show must go on is central to understanding her entire psychological framework.
From a very young age, she developed a phenomenal, almost terrifying ability to compartmentalize her pain.
She could step onto a stage or a soundstage, put on the mask of comedy, and deliver a brilliant, lighthearted performance, completely disconnected from the brutal reality of her personal life.
And the sources provide an anecdote that is so jarring it completely shatters how we view her early career.
This occurred during her time starring on Married with Children, when she was arguably one of the most famous young women in America.
She was trapped in a deeply toxic, physically abusive relationship.
She writes that this boyfriend slammed her head against the floor with such incredible force that it caused severe, visible swelling on her skull.
We need to sit with the gravity of that. This isn't just an argument that got out of hand.
This is severe, life-threatening domestic violence resulting in significant head trauma.
And what happens the very next morning?
The machinery of network television doesn't stop. She has a call time.
She goes to work on the set of one of the highest-rated sitcoms in the country.
She writes that the professional hairdresser on this set actually had to get highly creative with her hairstyling just to mask the visible swelling on her head from the assault.
Think about the sheer logistics and the silent complicity of that moment. You are sitting in a brightly lit makeup trailer surrounded by professionals whose job it is to scrutinize your face and hair.
You cannot hide a swollen skull from a hairstylist.
It requires a silent agreement that the trauma will be covered up with hairspray and teasing because the network needs an episode taped.
The profound isolation of being surrounded by a crew, yet utterly alone in your abuse, is staggering.
She sums up the absolute dissonance of that era with a quote that just stops you in your tracks.
She told the New York Times, "I went to work and it was funny, but I went home and not funny."
The level of cognitive dissonance required to survive that day, and countless days like it, is unfathomable. Think about the specific character she was playing.
She was Kelly Bundy, a character defined by broad physical comedy, oblivious confidence, and her status as a ubiquitous 90s sex symbol.
She had to channel all of that buoyant physical energy while her head was literally throbbing from being battered against a floor.
And the reader reviews we have in our source stack pick up heavily on this dark dichotomy.
Readers point out their own horror upon realizing that while she was experiencing this meteoric rise to fame, gracing magazine covers, and making the country laugh,
She was simultaneously being stalked by severe self-doubt. The reviews note that the book dives into her intense battles with eating disorders and body dysmorphia during this time.
which is a common psychological response to a life that feels completely out of control.
When your home life is violently unpredictable and your professional life is entirely dictated by the demands of a studio.
Controlling your food intake or obsessing over your physical form becomes a desperate attempt to exert agency over something.
I want you to reflect on your own life for a second. Have you ever had to put on a brave face at work?
Maybe you were going through a painful breakup, dealing with a family crisis, or you just felt physically terrible.
But you had to plaster on a fake smile to get through a client meeting or a shift. It's incredibly exhausting, right?
Now, I want you to multiply that pressure by an audience of millions of people who feel entitled to analyze your every move.
And add in the fact that your skull is physically swelling from an assault the night before.
The sheer psychological endurance that takes is terrifying.
It is a profound testament to her resilience, absolutely. But it also serves as a sharp indictment of an entertainment industry that demands its talent to perform and produce profit, regardless of the human cost.
The Hollywood machine did not pause for her pain. It simply instructed the hair department to camouflage it.
And she kept that relentless machine running for 50 years. She powered through the trauma, the heartbreak, the grueling schedules.
Until, finally, her body forced her to stop.
Which brings us to the brutal, unfiltered reality of her MS diagnosis in 2021.
This life-altering news arrived right in the middle of filming the third and final season of the hit show Dead to Me.
Let's briefly contextualize what this disease does. Multiple sclerosis is a disease of the central nervous system.
Think of your nervous system like a complex, highly efficient electrical grid running through your body, with the brain as the power station.
MS essentially strips the protective insulation off those electrical wires.
It disrupts the flow of information within the brain and between the brain and the body.
Its progression is notoriously unpredictable, and its symptoms can be severely debilitating.
For someone like Applegate, whose entire livelihood and artistic expression have relied on precise physical control and comedic timing, this is a catastrophic diagnosis.
The daily toll described in the publisher overviews in the interview is severe. We aren't talking about needing an extra cup of coffee because of fatigue.
The sources detail extreme, world-shrinking physical limitations.
She talks about being confined to a king-size bed for vast stretches of time.
She describes waking up and her hands are instantly painfully cramped.
She says there are days when she simply cannot move her head.
And days where she physically cannot walk the short distance to her own bathroom.
It represents a complete and terrifying loss of bodily autonomy.
It forces a radical, non-negotiable reevaluation of every single aspect of daily life, right down to the most basic human functions.
Even eating, which is a fundamental requirement for survival, becomes a dangerous minefield. She talks about severe, unpredictable dietary triggers.
She figured out through agonizing trial and error, and literally vomiting, that her body now violently rejects certain foods.
She notes that eating penne alla vodka makes her violently ill.
But through this grueling process, she found a bizarre, specific combination that is safe.
Papaya, lime, and cherries.
She states that if she eats anything other than that specific fruit combination, she throws up the next day and is entirely wiped out.
Describing herself as a disaster.
The micromanagement required just to avoid severe illness is a full-time, exhausting job.
It's a relentless cycle of hypervigilant symptom management, where a single mistake, like eating the wrong pasta dish, costs you days of your life.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. Culturally, we have a very specific script for how celebrities are supposed to handle chronic illness.
We expect them to become inspiring spokespeople.
We expect them to write books about finding the silver lining, maintaining a brave face, and staying positive against all odds.
But Applegate fiercely, aggressively rejects what the cultural zeitgeist calls toxic positivity.
Toxic positivity is the pervasive societal pressure to stay upbeat and optimistic no matter how dire or painful the circumstance.
It is an insidious concept because it essentially invalidates the very real pain, anger, and grief a person is experiencing.
Demanding that they make the healthy people around them feel more comfortable.
Applegate absolutely refuses to play that sanitized game. She refuses to be the smiling, noble poster child for MS.
She is breathtakingly blunt about her refusal.
She notes how much she hates hearing people say things like, "You're looking so good today."
She explains the fundamental disconnect. It doesn't matter how her hair makeup looks. Internally, she feels like she's dying.
She just wants someone to help her up out of bed. She doesn't want the empty platitudes.
And she has absolutely zero tolerance for the barrage of unsolicited medical advice that chronically ill people are constantly subjected to by well-meaning but ignorant observers.
Oh my gosh, her quote about this in the interview is legendary. She says, and you can hear the exhaustion in the words, "I don't want to hear about your soy oil water tincture crap. No, thank you. We're so tired. We're tired to a point where you would never understand."
She emphasizes every single word. You will never understand.
That is a profound, necessary boundary to set.
She is explicitly telling the healthy world, do not try to fix me with your trendy wellness cures.
Do not blame me for not healing myself with green juice.
And do not try to make yourself feel better by telling me I look fine. Just witness and acknowledge the reality of the suffering.
She and her friend Cindy, who also lives with MS, actually joke about wanting to write a blunt, informational pamphlet to just hand out to people so they stop asking questions.
They want to call it MS for dumbasses.
The goal of the pamphlet is just to strip away all the medical jargon and explain the grim reality.
As Applegate says, it's slowly killing us, guys. Period. End of story. Whether it's 20 years, 30 years, it's taking away our functions.
Hearing someone speak with that level of stark candor about their own physical decline is jarring for a lot of people, but it is deeply necessary.
By speaking the unspoken, ugly truths about chronic illness, she is validating the hidden experiences of millions of people who feel silenced by the societal expectation that they should suffer quietly and bravely.
And it is crucial to note that while she rejects the toxic positivity, she isn't just wallowing in bitter isolation.
She is actively channeling this dark, messy, physical reality into genuine human connection.
She co-hosts a podcast with the actress Jamie Lynn Sigler, who is famously known for playing mezzo-soprano on The Sopranos.
And who has also lived with MS for decades.
Finding community within the mess is an incredibly powerful coping mechanism.
When the healthy world simply cannot comprehend the depth of your fatigue or the grief of your lost autonomy, you have to find the people who speak your language.
Their podcast is appropriately titled Messy, with a capital M and S.
And they use it to get intensely vulnerable about life's curveballs.
They bring on massive A-list guests. People like Will Ferrell, Gene Smart, Robin Roberts, Jimmy Kimmel.
But it's not a standard celebrity interview show. The reviews from their listeners point out that this podcast has become a literal lifeline for others dealing with early MS diagnoses.
One reviewer specifically noted that listening to Messy was the only thing that helped them get through the terrifying early stages of their own MS diagnosis.
She has taken the exact thing that isolated her, the disease that literally confined her to her bedroom, and weaponized it to build a bridge to others.
She's providing the exact kind of raw, unfiltered, deeply honest community that she wished she had when she was first diagnosed.
That raw, unfiltered approach is the exact DNA of her memoir, You with the Sad Eyes.
And the reader reception we are seeing in the source material has been nothing short of a masterclass in the power of radical honesty.
The consensus from the masses is overwhelming. We are looking at a tidal wave of 5-star reviews across the board.
From massive consumer platforms like Amazon and Goodreads, all the way up to major editorial outlets.
The alignment between highbrow critics and everyday readers is incredibly impressive. You have the New York Times calling the book funny, furious, and profane.
Jimmy Kimmel noted it is not your typical celebrity memoir.
Harper's Bazaar called it refreshing and unflinching.
And the everyday reader reviews echo those exact sentiments, using the same powerful words over and over again. Raw, darkly funny, brutally honest.
One reader, Brent R., perfectly captured the appeal. He wrote that the book isn't trying to be inspirational or artificially polished.
He said it's blunt, it's funny in a deeply dark way, and sometimes it is pretty hard to sit with, which is exactly why it works so well.
He noted that it doesn't read like a PR-approved celebrity memoir at all.
It feels like someone who is finally done performing for the public and is willing to just say the quiet parts out loud.
Saying the quiet parts out loud is the perfect encapsulation of this cultural moment.
The public is deeply accustomed to highly curated, heavily sanitized, ghost-written celebrity narratives that read like extended press releases.
When a figure of her stature breaks that mold and presents the ugly, unvarnished, terrifying truth, it is deeply arresting.
And there is a very specific consensus among the readers
Yeah.
regarding how you should consume this book.
Almost universally, the reviewers insist that the audiobook is the definitive, essential way to experience this memoir,
Applegate narrates it herself.
which, given her undeniable vocal talent and legendary comedic timing, would naturally make for an incredible listening experience.
But the reviews suggest it's far more than just a good performance. It is a profound emotional transmission.
Exactly. Readers talk about the immense impact of hearing her actual voice deliver these words.
They talk about hearing her voice crack, hearing her physically cry while reading the passages about her childhood trauma.
One reviewer, Jackie, said listening to the audio made it feel like Applegate was sitting right across the table from her, just having an incredibly intimate conversation about her life.
Another reviewer, Nicole, said you hear the pain in her voice and you truly feel it all with her.
This raises an important question. Why is the public reacting so strongly, so viscerally to this deeply unpolished approach?
I think it speaks to a massive cultural fatigue with artificiality.
We live in an era of Instagram filters, curated personas, and managed PR crises. Applegate is offering the absolute antithesis of that culture.
She is offering her actual unedited diaries, her actual tears, her actual anger, and her actual failing body.
Audiences are starved for that level of uncompromising authenticity.
And it is completely changing how audiences interact with her past body of work.
Several reviewers mentioned that immediately after reading or listening to the book, they felt compelled to go back and rewatch her classic shows like Dead to Me and Married, with children.
But they note that they are watching them with a completely new, heartbreaking context.
They are watching the performance while now fully understanding the hidden cost of that performance.
When you watch a slapstick scene from Married, with children, knowing she might be hiding severe physical trauma under a teased hairstyle.
Or when you watch Dead to Me knowing she was actively receiving her devastating MS diagnosis between takes.
It elevates the work from mere television entertainment to a profound, almost superhuman display of endurance.
One reader explicitly said they admire her on a completely different level now. The respect for her resilience has skyrocketed.
She isn't just viewed as a funny, beautiful actress anymore. She's recognized as a profound survivor who managed to make the entire world laugh while she was crying behind closed doors.
It is a legacy-cementing piece of literature. As the publisher notes state, this book forever cements her formidable and iconoclastic legacy.
It completely reframes her entire 50-year career, demanding that we respect the strength it took to simply show up.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive, we have to acknowledge that Christina Applegate's You with the Sad Eyes is not a story that ends with a neat, satisfying bow.
There is no magical healing journey. There is no Hollywood ending where the trauma is vanquished and everything is perfectly resolved.
And she is fiercely clear about that reality. When she was asked by the interviewer what it was like to finally hold the finished printed book in her hands, she completely rejected the romantic idea that the process brought her deep peace.
She stated bluntly that there was definitely not a sense of catharsis or closure.
She elaborated on that, saying, "You can't just say it's done and now I don't think about it anymore. I don't need to slam the book closed. This is my life, and it's part of my fiber and my being and my DNA."
For her, the goal of opening the firebox wasn't to achieve closure. The goal was simply to say, it happened. How can I help others?
It is an act of profound service born directly from immense suffering.
She is utilizing her pain, laying it bare, to ensure that the next person who receives a terrifying medical diagnosis, or the next teenager hiding abuse behind a forced smile, feels slightly less alone in the dark.
So, what does this all mean? For you, the listener, I think it's a powerful, necessary reminder that the brightest, most comedic figures in our culture, the people who seem the most put together, successful, and lighthearted, very often carry the heaviest invisible weights.
You never truly know what kind of agony is operating behind the mask of comedy.
And it forces us to critically re-examine our own expectations, both of the public figures who entertain us and the people in our own daily lives.
It asks us to be far more forgiving, more observant, and more willing to sit quietly with the messy, uncomfortable realities of human suffering, rather than demanding a sanitized, socially acceptable version of the truth.
Which brings us to a final, lingering thought. Something for you to chew on after this deep dive is over.
We spent a lot of time talking about those teenage diaries. They were initially meant to be locked away in a steel firebox and burned to ashes upon her death to permanently protect her secrets.
Instead, she chose to publish them for the world.
So the question is, does publishing those deeply private diaries actually free the author from the grip of their past?
Or does the act of publishing them, of turning private agony into a public audiobook, permanently bind the author to that trauma forever?
It is a profound psychological paradox. Does sharing the pain with millions of strangers dilute its power, spreading the heavy weight across a vast audience?
Or does reliving it for the masses, having your tears recorded and preserved in an audiobook forever, actually make the burden heavier to carry?
It's a complex question without a simple answer, much like Applegate's story itself. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into a truly remarkable life. Take care of yourselves, and we'll catch you next time.